like to call the monthly meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission, Planning and Zoning Economic Development Authority to order. Could I have a roll call, please? I slip into my other hats every once in a while.
Jacobs.
Here.
Novitsky.
Here.
Marquez Simula. Here. Surrick.
Here.
And not present is Herringer and Mershon.
Okay, I see we have a flag now, so we can honor our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have a couple of items on the consent agenda. The minutes from our regular meeting of June 7th and approval of the financial report and the payments of the bills. Does anybody have any questions on the minutes from that meeting or the payment of the bills? All right, if not, I will ask for a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. And I don't have to do roll calls anymore, right?
No.
I don't have to do them anymore, do I, Kelly? Okay. All right, our business items. Discuss 2022 levy limit and budget for the EDA Commercial Revitalization Fund.
Right.
Ron.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. So I think a good way to think about this evening's EDA meeting is kind of like a work session for the EDA. We're not asking for any action, but asking you guys to weigh in on a couple of things so that we can prepare for our budget, one thing, and then also get some feedback on potential redevelopment sites. So first item is preparation. We've got budget season is upon us, and we anticipate bringing a full and formal budget to this body for review in September, as we typically do. But in advance of that, staff wanted to have a conversation about our Commercial Revitalization Fund, or most commonly referred to as Fund 408. And that's our capital fund that's designed to provide resources for a couple of activities right now. The facade improvement grant program, and then our commercial revitalization project. So in the commercial revitalization project, we acquire the legally non-conforming commercial properties that are zoned commercially, but they're single family along University and Central Avenue. And there's no perfect rhythm to it. We kind of acquire them as they become available on the market. You know, this unofficial goal of one a year is kind of how we look at that, because we've been setting aside around $200,000 every year for the last 3 years. And then for the facade improvement grant program, we've been setting aside $50,000 a year. And that's for the facade improvement grants, as well as the surveillance cameras that are incorporated into that program. And then in May of this year, the EDA did allocate, as part of a pilot program, $45,000 of fund balance from Fund 408 to create a pilot grant program for the fire suppression assistance effort that we've discussed recently, to help small businesses install fire suppression systems in their building. Typically, it's going to be the sprinkler system. So we've yet to utilize that, but think that there is a place for that in potentially our ongoing operations out of this fund. So with the addition of that fire suppression emphasis, and the fact that many of our single family acquisitions that are in the revitalization program cost more than $200,000, and we have not increased this levy for 3 years. And before that, the history was included in your packet. It's been a bit of a fluctuating target, but above 200,000 since 2015. And just a little bit of a reminder, this levy is what was the former HRA operating levy that became managed by the EDA and now has been funding these capital projects. So we wanted to talk with the commission and see if you wanted to consider an increase to this levy for 2022 in advance, again, of our budget preparation that's underway right now. The maximum amount is in and around 310,000, and we've been static at 250 for the last 3 years. Joe could provide more insight, but the way that the levy, it's tied to the applicable market value tax base of the city, and a small percentage of that then is contributes to our limit, or what we can limit in total, and it's 0.1085% of taxable market value. So similar to the general fund levy, but just on a much smaller scale. Would you want to add anything or subtract anything from that, Joe? To just how we arrive at these numbers and the chart in your packet to get to that.
So commission members, the EDA levy that is used for EDA operating purposes and the HRA levy, which is used for project purposes, are different, as Aaron has mentioned, from other general levies, in that they do have a statutory levy limit that applies to them every year. And that levy limit is based on a percentage of market value in the city. So what this means is you do not have, unlike the city's general levy, you do not have the complete flexible local control over how much in any one year. So if in year X, you decide that you might do a larger project and have levy more for that project, you're at the whims of our market values up in that year or not. Because that if the market values are down in that year, your levy is going to be limited. And there's been a few times in the past when it has been limited for that. So the question becomes then, in a year when market values are high enough that there's levy limit available, I mean, yet you're levying under the limit. The question is, in that year, should you levy a little more in anticipation of a future year when you don't have that flexibility? Or in anticipation of a project that you know isn't going to come in at 200,000 and
Right.
you don't want to dip into higher fund balance. So those would be sort of what I would think of as your questions of, those charged with governance, as to whether it makes sense to add this to the levy while you can in the year that you can.
Is this the money, this, for that house on 40th and University? That White House that we just burned down, was this bought with that money, or that's different?
Yeah, that would be this pool, this fund.
It's money we can use to clear out properties to get prepared for redevelopment, and then the facade, and then the sprinkler system.
Right, those are the three baskets right now, I think.
Yeah, because I'm for going for to increase it to the 310 because it's a good fund. I mean, look what's happened with our facade program, and personally, I've asked if we could add landscaping to some of these small businesses to help them redo their front, the ones that do have small areas, to increase because you have a nice door, a nice window, and then you have a crappy grass in front or crappy landscaping in front. So, I think this has been a good program, and we've used the monies really well, and people can actually see where their money is going. And like they said, it might be, 5 years from now, another recession may hit, and then the amount of funds we can get from it would decrease. So I'm for it.
I basically feel the same way as Councilmember Biskins. I love the idea of the landscaping with, if there's nothing else they can improve on the facade of the building, but cleaning up their parking lot spaces with better landscaping, which would also really help with trash. They get stuck in like rose bushes, and there's other things that cities have learned are not the best for city landscaping. Would really improve our business district to have that curb appeal.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
kind of going down the line. You guys have any?
I can go. You want me to go?
Go, I'm still thinking.
Yeah, I would agree with council member and mayor on this. It covers the home energy too, right?
This,
Fund or no?
I'd have to look where we're drawing CE.
I don't think it does. Isn't it separate as far as
You
acquiring,
know
isn't
what
it
I'm
for
talking about?
acquiring
Yes,
property? Joe?
yeah, absolutely. And I'd have to go back and look, our Commissioner Novitsky, to where, so we allocated resources to that over a 5-year period, I believe. Like we said we'd do $5,000
And there-
up
yeah.
to, and it may very well have come out of Fund 408. I just can't remember from memory,
I was
but
just trying to
we
add
still
more
have,
good things to the funds.
yeah, that fund is still, or we're still participating in the home energy audit
Isn't
reimbursement.
that that's a different fund. That's a different project. It isn't this 310 plus whatever we do for the facade grant.
Yes and no.
It's
So,
a pretty minor one.
right,
balance
Yes, it
anyway.
is
was just
minor,
to
right.
Say what else the fund was doing.
right. I do need to do a little bit of research to see exactly where we pulled that initial seed money out of. It was ahead of my time, but it's likely that it was 408. And we
Anyway,
would,
It's a good program. and
Yep.
I'm glad we're still
yeah,
offering it.
yeah, thank you. And
Is the facade available on university as well?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
I thought it was 40.
I'm not saying that very confidently.
Oh, yeah.
40th for sure in Central. It might not be on
I
university.
don't think it's
Yeah,
on university.
yeah, we haven't expanded to university.
If
Yeah.
if we're going to expand, I would like it
Yeah,
expanded there, and then after any of those businesses look into moving forward with the landscaping part of it.
I'm in favor of the increase. I think it's premature to tag on landscaping at this point. My initial response to that, hearing it from the other council members, is they've gotten a bucket to do their facade. That's money that they didn't have to spend. It is their property. There should be some investment on their part. That's my initial response to it, but
We usually do, the first time.
I understand that it is 50-50, but it's still,
The first year that we did it, they did 70,000 more. than
I
what we
understand
gave,
that.
So that's.
I
way more than
understand
we
that. I'm just saying, for me, it's premature at this point. I don't want to get into the debate, but for me, at this time, it's premature to start thinking about adding other items.
and tonight, just to be clear, we're not making
It's
like
just
those
discussion.
decisions.
Yeah.
It's our, do you want to consider filling the bigger basket to feed these smaller programs, and then we
I
will
would
come
be-
back?
That would be for
Absolutely.
filling the bigger basket.
Yep.
Then we can come back and look at the changes to the parameters of facade improvement grant program, or do we want to put it into the commercial revitalization general basket? We have some flexibility, so. And you don't have to maximize the available levy limit. We could pick a number, that isn't the full 310.
Does that money carry over from year to year? If we don't use the whole, if we don't use it, it carries over, right?
Yes, any amount from what's called the project levy, that isn't spent in that given year, stays in the 408 fund balance available for the same.
Okay.
Then does that have any effect on what the maximum cap is for that following year? If we have
No,
a surplus amount left?
No, the formula just calculates each
Okay.
year independently based on market value of the preceding year.
Okay, thank you.
So thoughts on the full, 310 or somewhere in between?
Yep.
I think the full 310.
I think.
I mean,
It's not a big jump when you look at.
No,
the
it's not a
overall.
real big jump, but with the amount of money that people are asking for homes, even something that's totally run down, we could find ourselves in a situation of not having enough money to procure that property. And so I think raising it is an excellent idea with some of the other stuff we want to do.
yeah, and I think not raising it over a period of years, if you're talking with constituents, you can explain that, it had, this percentage might seem significant in the context of the overall amount and the increase, but we haven't touched it for quite a while. So,
Yeah, we have visible things they can look at.
right, it's
It's a
given,
good program that
it puts it back into the community in a real tangible way. So, yeah, I agree. All right, so we'll amend or change course.
We don't need to make an.
No, right now, just seeing what your thoughts were, and then you'll have another look and review, obviously, at the full budget in September, where we can look at this in a little bit greater detail and see how we allocated it within there. And if you're
Okay.
comfortable. Thank you.
All right. Right, the next one is to discuss redevelopment concept for 2201 37th Avenue Northeast.
Can you bring up that PowerPoint? Just for this discussion, we might as well have some of the graphics that are in our packet up on the screen, so we can stimulate the conversation around this. So recently, staff were contacted by a developer, and this developer doesn't have a company name right now, so it's difficult so let me explain. Yeah.
Well,
So,
that's
right, it's not the greatest way to start, but hear me out. So the gentleman is known to us. He was a former employee with a Lattice, actually, and then he moved to Roars and was working in finance for both of those companies. Roars is redeveloping the strip mall on University Avenue in Fridley. The strip mall that was just recently torn down, and they're
Oh,
doing-
and the building that's going up there?
yeah,
Okay.
so he has experience with reputable companies, but is branching out and trying to do his own thing, and maybe partnering with some of his old development partners from Roars. We don't know, but he came to us looking for sourcing sites for market rate workforce apartment community in Columbia Heights. We discussed the priority redevelopment areas that are identified in the comprehensive plan. And the former Unique Thrift Store site is in an opportunity area and is guided for a different land use mixture in our comprehensive plan, a mix of high density residential and commercial retail. This site still in our future land use map says commercial. And we've actually identified these two parcels. These are existing multifamily. I don't know how many units are in each, but for a higher density redevelopment. So I think the comprehensive plan is directing us to look at this whole area from a redevelopment lens. And we've got a kind of languishing strip mall, 2-tenant. There is one tenant in the east end of that building right now. It's a wellness chiropractic fitness center. We don't know a whole lot more than that. I've never been in there, but it doesn't seem
I did not, in the thrift
on
store?
if you're facing the store, the right-hand side.
I'll be darned.
For the sign place?
Yeah, or no, well,
It's like on the right when you're facing.
yeah, so this right here, so it's
Oh, in that
it's
one.
2-tenant.
an Ace's old
design.
spot.
The sign places in this strip
I
mall.
see, okay.
Oh, but it's in the right-hand side of that
I
building?
didn't know there were
Yes.
anything.
Oh, dang.
You wouldn't know because it
You
doesn't
wouldn't
seem
know.
too
It's not
active.
there.
Yeah, it's,
It's only
You
special
would not know.
clients go there.
yeah.
Yes,
So-
yes, the secret place.
So I mean, it's in a great area. It's proximity to the shopping and the other new redevelopment that's taken place in St. Anthony. Our new senior facility and the NOAA apartments to the north are well cared for from what it seems, just the more aging.
The part like-
Yeah,
Yeah, those are
they
very
seem
well
to
run.
seem to be well kept. And so from a global perspective, could you go to the next slide, Ben? We could consider a mix of residential and commercial redevelopment from staff and the comprehensive plan perspective. The orange parcels are R4, so the highest density residential. We've got the older apartments, the senior. These are apartments here. So we're in that mix. We've got the city liquor store. I think a vertical mixed use project makes sense from our perspective. But I don't want to entirely rule out a rezoning to R4. It wouldn't be out of place contextually if you looking at this map. It's in and around other R4 properties. But I think the comp plan is trying to ask us to think a little bit bigger than that. And I don't know, Minerva, we've agreed on that thesis. And we push the developer to say, I think, we'd like you to take a look at a mixed use project for two reasons. It's placed in the city, and then also we could potentially offer you more flexibility. Right now, if you went straight housing, you really would have to rezone to R4, and that's the maximum density that you could consider for a 3-acre parcel like this. Because there's no mixed use, it wouldn't be a PUD, right? So if you did a planned unit development and introduced commercial retail, I think staff would support an increased density over the R4 standards. And it would make the project more financially feasible from a development standpoint too. So that was the guidance we gave him.
What's the difference in unit numbers between those two?
Yeah, it's to be determined. Right now, they ran a fit plan, like a site plan that's in your packet, and you can show it, that use the R4 standards. So theoretically, if we rezoned R4 and did a project, this is what it could support. That's 112 units.
Okay.
Under their arrangement, there's even fluctuation with that, because if you changed your bedroom arrangements, your parking calcs and your unit calcs would go up and down, but in and around 100 to 120 units on an R4 project.
Comp plan would accommodate how many roughly?
The comp plan would need to be amended if we went straight residential,
Right.
because it's calling for a mix of
If
uses.
they were to do that mix according to the likes of the comp. plan,
Yeah,
how many units would they be allowed to put in there?
I'd have to look. We haven't done that analysis. I think it's safe to say
So
that
it's,
it,
yeah, like Aaron was explaining, it's a lot of numbers to calculate with because we're considering number of bedrooms per unit.
Right,
and
I
based off that,
I'm
it's
just
different.
looking for a ballpark.
150 to
Is it
200.
double?
150 to
or-
200, I think, is a pretty safe range. It's
So it
3
is-
acres. Just think we're doing 260 on 2.5 acres on 40th and Central. That's TOD, much higher densities there. This is somewhere in between.
Okay.
R4.
That's all I needed was.
Yeah.
Ballpark
So
perspective.
I think it could go both ways. And what I don't, and I could be wrong, but you guys, right now, staff's not excited about a partially filled, strip center where we've had to bat down some bad ideas that have come in for this recently. So I don't want to just say this is a horrible idea, never consider just a housing proposal, because I think we should. But as staff, we need to be able to give potential developers direction when they come in and say, what is the EDA and council? And this is an EDA meeting from our perspective, because anything on here, if it's redeveloped, is going to require TIF. So that,
Why would
Yeah.
that lot require TIF?
why would it?
Yeah.
Because the cost to acquire, it's going to be significantly above what a project that was dealing with raw land is going to support. And then demo,
Tear down?
demo, and then just acquisition itself is a TIF eligible
Maybe a short
cost.
TIF, this one?
What's that?
Can we do a short TIF on this one like we did with the flats?
I think it's
Why do we have to do 25?
it's all amorphous. We don't know.
Yeah,
That's
so I thought for sure this one would not be a TIF because there's no water issues. Yeah, there's a demolition, but it didn't have all the other stuff that other projects have had. to do. And I'm like, oh, crap.
maybe not soil issues. We don't know, but sewer issues. So in talking with Kevin about this,
City's got-
yeah, so there would most certainly be TIF eligible costs. So I would frame it like this. What type of project would you want to invest in from a TIF perspective? That's kind of a great framework. Is it the mixed use? Would you consider just a straight multifamily? Maybe a multifamily that's better than the one being proposed.
Mhm.
Those are the kind of the guide, but what don't you like about what's being proposed? And we can take that back. What do you want to see? Those are the
Yeah.
questions that,
Well, you answered one question. I've got one.
yeah,
This guy is just starting out with his development and how is his project going in Tripoli?
it's not his project. That's the thing. So
How many buildings has he built?
for the companies he's worked for,
No, for the ones that he's
Independent.
He doesn't even have a name. He probably
Yeah.
hasn't built any.
so the answer is 0. So, and
The reason I bring that up is because we've got a fun little project going on with the senior in Houston that's Ryan's just having a fun time with.
right,
Because they don't have their sub.
that's their second senior project.
Right, and so I'm a little nervous about being his first. If, you know, he can have all these contacts, but then he has
No.
to have his own crews.
Yeah, and we
And
understand that concern.
subcontractors and.
Yeah, we understand that concern and we thought that through as well, but more so we want, with him approaching us, it opened our minds to be like, well, this is a non-active site. It is like it should be redeveloped and what would the council support? So it more so shifting away, yes, he has an idea for it, but it opened up our minds to think what other ideas.
And we don't want the situation in this one to happen like what happened with the housing, the guy that builds houses over at Silver Lake at that 5 acres.
Yeah, we don't want to be the
Yeah, you
test.
had it.
We don't want to be the beta test for
Right,
for someone's
exactly.
new development. I totally agree. And we were candid with the
You had your
gentleman.
hand up first.
Yeah.
I'm in favor. I think that's a great location to do high density as opposed to other places in the city. I'm much more comfortable with this. I think because of its geographic location, I think having some type of mixed use makes sense to me.
I agree.
But I would want a very limited length of tip. That would be one of my criteria.
And sometimes it gets beyond our control, but yes, I mean, I think we always shoot for that bar. And it's always a balance of what are we getting for what are we giving? And if something walks through the door that really makes sense, then
I would, yeah, and I would close with saying I have huge concerns about the fact that he's coming forward without even, I mean, you can throw a book open on a desk and pick a name.
yeah,
That's,
I sat down with them and I
I'm wondering
said,
if that
listen,
speaks to his,
credentials are going to be important to this body. They're used to the likes of Aladdis.
Right.
And I know you used to work there, but that's your bar. And, you know, that's the expectation now. And
So yeah, that led him to understand that he will need to pair up with a developer.
so he did go back to Roars and in between those two conversations and said, oh yeah, we're going to do it with Roars. And then staff said, well, that's more exciting because they have a really good track record and a great project going. And then he came back and said, now they're not so interested. So
I want to see it on paper.
yeah,
So is this kind of more of a conversation of just like, this is another possibility we have thought of, instead of us looking at it like, this is the
Yeah.
proposal, it's more, here's another way to look at this specific property.
Yeah, so
That's
the
kind of
site-
more-
Yeah, with
Okay.
no company.
that's the framework.
Okay, more so
There,
than
and-
it is.
And it's really, it is no offense to the gentleman, but he knows the challenge in front of him and it was comfortable with that. Like, let's get some feedback about what do they want on this site? What would they put their money behind? And it's fair to go back to him and say, they're concerned not only with the project, but that we've got somebody that, you know, that doesn't have a track record and see, you know, how he responds. You'd have to partner up with somebody more or less to convince them that it's worth investing in.
Part of my concern, you and I talked about this. And part of my concern is that he, according to the verbiage in here, he did not want to talk about doing commercial and apartments above.
He wasn't
Didn't wanna do it.
totally opposed to it. Yeah,
Well, it
Yeah.
sounded like that wasn't what his interest was. He just wanted to build these apartments. And he's calling them luxury workforce apartments.
It's kind of weird.
The two names don't go together as far as I'm concerned. I'm hoping that the Aladdis project is not workforce, that it is going to be some higher end apartments. We are due for that. And the other thing is that Dominion came and proposed to us a beautiful project. The building is beautiful, that it was going to be workforce housing. And from what I gather from people who live there,
Grand Central Flats.
the Grand Central Flats,
Yeah.
it is a lot of low income. They have used their Section 8 coupons to move in there. And he sat here and told me that that's not what the purpose of this building was. So if Dominion ever comes and wants to talk to us again, he's going to hear it from me because he did not follow through with what he said. And so what is his plans for this? You know, I mean, I believe Minneapolis is putting huge pressure on us and the Met Council to build more low-income housing. Now, is this a way of getting more low-income housing in Columbia Heights? I don't know. I don't know this gentleman
No, I think
at all. I don't know what his purpose is. I don't like this particular project at all. It's just too cookie cutter as far as I'm concerned. We're not a low
Points-
ball community.
no,
I'm tired of
points all
people
well
saying that
taken.
about us.
I think it is a gateway to the city, as identified in the comprehensive plan. It's important to have something attractive and well done, for sure. So it is a site that we could easily overlook, and I think this is an opportunity to put a spotlight on it
Yeah.
and say,
Mhm.
what are the goalposts? How concerned are we? We're going to take more inquiries on this, and we want to be armed with
Right.
constructive feedback to set the bar.
Well, it started the conversation. I mean, maybe some other developers will come forward with a different plan. I mean, that would be my hope.
That is the goal, to keep moving the ball. What are we looking for?
My opinion, this site should be at least mixed use. Even if it was the most reputable apartment builder, I would not be for it right now.
Straight
We
apartments.
are getting a lot of apartments in the city. We need to have more businesses, and if we can combine them too, that would be the preferred.
Go ahead. Are you done? I would like to see, although I think those two apartment buildings behind the strip mall,
Mhm.
I'm sure they're gonna be here a long time, but if they were to go up sale, I would like to see the purple from Unique across the street, the two apartments and the strip mall, because if you develop just the Unique site, you're stuck with that ugly,
Little strip mall, you mean?
that strip mall with the horrible signage, and it's just so run down and ragged, and we want something that looks nice. Well, they come up to that corner, that's the first thing they see is that rundown, which gives an impression of our city.
Yes, you're
So
right.
ideally, I mean, it would be nice if we did the purple section, obtain the two apartment buildings in the strip mall, because right now the strip mall is not worth anything, and people are opposed to closing down 37th Place from the 37th. They went through that. Because, and also you can't do anything with that purple. I don't know why it's.
It shouldn't be purple, it should be green, it's grass.
No,
Yeah.
well, no,
The
it
triangle,
belongs.
yeah.
Isn't it
Triangle, isn't the triangle grass?
Yeah, it should be green.
Right,
Well,
yes.
it should be off gray because we can't do anything with it. 'Cause the
No, you can't.
The rail company owns a good chunk of it, and there's a ton of stuff underneath
Mhm.
that
That's the Lions
grass.
Garden.
Right, and that's why it's a garden, because you can't, dig it
Can't
up.
do anything with
So I
it.
think that should be turned into a neutral color, because right now it looks like the city could do something because it's purple, and we can't. But if we
No.
could get a good chunk, but like I said, those two apartment buildings are.
Are the
actually-
apartment buildings pink or are they they're not part of the
Apartment
purple?
Buildings are pink, and if I'm not wrong, Erin, isn't that light commercial? Or
Yeah,
light
it's
business?
Limited business.
Limited business.
The
sorry.
apartments themselves are more of a beige if you go out there. No. I just love the.
Yeah,
My color wheel is.
Need to make the pinks purple and the purple's gray.
Whatever color we're
Yeah.
gonna make it, it's that mixed use.
We understand everything that you're saying. We agree with. And the little strip mall, it needs help. There are some,
Tremendous
there's
help.
some neat little businesses in there.
Yeah.
And then there's some ones that are struggling and need some work. So if we could redevelop the site, the subject property, there's a greater chance that we can elevate that site.
And I
through
agree with
redevelopment.
Nick that if we could do some mixed use, get some business, I don't know what the market is right now with businesses with the pandemic, how everything's gonna shake out, because I know they're talking about empty office buildings still. So depending on what you're looking for, what kind of businesses, maybe a small gym or a small, coffee shop, you always want coffee, cozy, warm coffee shop. But, that little strip mall piece, and I'm sure, because those two apartment buildings are part of our organically grown affordable housing to begin with, so I hate to lose them, but that's kind of like the ideal, that whole section, maybe incorporate affordable housing so those people don't lose their homes, affordable homes, but, yeah, I don't know.
For future discussion, maybe try to get the strip mall included in the facade program if it's not.
Yeah.
Maybe it would help spur something like it has in other areas. I mean, I know there's businesses remodeling and
Yeah.
After getting-
Sign.
Yeah, the sign company that's there, I think is providing signs
Oh, my God. How
for
they stay in
everyone
business.
there.
I provided signs for the rest of the
I
street.
know,
It's-
but they look,
Well, maybe they're waiting for their own chance.
Right.
what are they, what?
That would be
Well,
just,
if they're waiting to be eligible themselves then, because they know
Right.
about the program, but they're like, why would we do it if we're
Yeah,
still eventually expanded? Yeah,
I really like the idea of expanding the facade improvement grant program beyond.
Yes.
and that's for a
Correct.
future discussion.
Yep. So,
No, no.
yeah, it's an area of opportunity, most
Mhm.
definitely.
Mhm.
It's got a lot of things going for it. We need to be equipped to tell people what direction to go. And I think we've achieved that tonight for sure.
Great spot for.
Checklist, have a
Yep.
company name.
Yeah, that's-
Well, it is
yeah,
great.
get yourself a company
We're not
first.
gonna do experiments here.
I'm rooting for the guy because I think he's capable, but yeah, this
But
is a,
his business acumen is questionable for me if you come in without a company name. If he's got the kind of experience he has, anybody knows that you get a name on your company before you walk through anyone's door.
indeed.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you're developer A on my
Yes.
staff report. Yeah.
Yeah.
I read this thing twice looking for the name of the developer and I went, there is none.
Yeah, your skills are very good, Marlene.
Thank you.
You picked up on
I
that.
picked up on that right away and I went, oh, this already wasn't.
When it's vague and they're not promoting the name.
That's a little vague,
It
yeah.
was hard for me to draft with that in mind. so,
Yes, indeed.
I think we definitely have some constructive feedback and some direction. I spoke with another company today about this site. So just to let you know that we can do something here.
The other question, since we're, just discussing what we want to do with the site, is mixed use used a lot anymore? I know we were trying, when the bank building, it was under wasn't it mixed use?
Mixed use zoning, yeah.
Yeah, but it was coming out of favor and builders are having a hard time filling the first floors unless they have something like what we're doing with the government center or a grocery store.
So mixed use is a trend that's on the upward and nationally, but I actually surveyed a lot of people about if this particular site were to be a mixed use apartment, what shops do you want to see at the first level?
Right.
And I got nothing back except for what the two things you said,
Coffee shop would be
and
perfect.
and
there,
a
yeah.
convenience store.
Which
or
you
some
have
sort of
across the
grocery.
street at the gas station.
Yeah, or down the road at that cup.
I think it would
So-
be a small component,
Right.
but we'd go PUD, not rezone to mixed use. We have kind of done away with mixed use zoning in many
That's
ways.
what I thought.
It's very similar to PUD conceptually, and that's why we reintroduced.
PUD would be really good if we had that whole corner. That
For
whole
sure.
Square, if we could go, I mean, that would be awesome, but like I said, those apartments aren't going anywhere.
From a
So-
Met Council and from a planning principle perspective, we need some other mixed use element to try to bring more density into the site other than the R4. So that was our thesis internally. Whether or not the market's going to say we absolutely can't, we don't know yet until we start talking to some other individuals. And we thought we couldn't do it on Central, just for an example, on the site that we're doing it on. And then that led into now we're talking about it on the Hy-V site and on a scale that still kind of blows my mind for vertical mixed use. So, but that is Central Avenue.
I'm with KT when if it's high density, this is a good spot for it because there's not much residential around it and traffic will be fine as far as I'm concerned. So
It'd be really great if we could, I don't really know actually, as I say this, if Preston Park has like a walking path, but it'd be great to like redevelop the area. So bringing in a whole bunch of extra people, we can make it more of this, neighborhood where people can feel like they belong. And then there's the Mexican restaurant at that little strip mall that's still in business. And those before that owner, there's another owner there
Yeah.
for a long time.
Kuko.
So I think those kind of businesses or like a dry cleaner, that strip mall, those businesses have been there for a while. So it is, it
You
is
know, it's just they
utilized.
need to be
And I also
fixed.
think that the idea of putting an apartment building next to the city-owned liquor store is probably a smart deal too. We might get more sales. there'll be
Got a
more
nod from
store,
Joe
market
that,
distance.
yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah.
And there'd be more people to catch folks if they get lost
When
from the
we
memory
talk
care.
about mixed use and we're talking about businesses, is it retail or would also accommodate like some small office type business?
I think you could do an insurance
commercial.
broker, you
That's
know,
what I'm
that,
wondering.
that scale,
Seems like
so.
when we get into that conversation, we're always thinking in terms of a retail
Right,
establishment.
Right.
I was thinking brewery.
And I think
A
too with
brewery,
like. for the
salon,
whole
I
site,
mean,
rumors.
spa.
That's what I was, yeah.
You know, everyone being able to order things on the internet to have delivered, you still need a space to like make sandwiches and coffee, but you could order like jewelry, maybe from the internet, you know, so there's some things I think as things are moving forward that we're still gonna need those. And there's a dance studio in the strip mall, like, that kind of, that's random.
Salsa studio.
It's also a church.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to,
There's a lot going
have
on.
to figure that one
Yeah.
out in particular, but yeah,
And a church too?
yeah.
Yeah, there's a
Church.
lot of different uses on that site that some are permitted,
The,
some are
the
not.
church is not supposed to be a
There's a
church.
church on the strip mall?
In the
How did
dance
that
studio.
get built there?
We need to have a meeting about that.
It's been
'cause I
there
reached out
too
to
long.
What did it present itself as?
Well, that's the problem. It didn't present itself, and that's with the multi-tenant retail centers, that's a common problem. And we are working on that business use certificate of occupancy permit program to try to chip
Mhm.
away at that. But in many cases, they'll just open up, you know, and I think that's what happened with the church. There was no pit stop at zoning, you know, it just,
Interesting.
it happens.
So even if they rented the space, they can't have a church. Wasn't there a church in the, next to the taco place in that white building with the little fencing on the roof? There was a church in there for a while too.
Next to El Taco.
Oh, you mean on Central?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was.
What about the church at community grounds? As long
We
as
are
it came
way-
up. I mean, as
So-
long as we're talking about it.
Let me call Elizabeth. So they,
Apparently,
that,
we have a list of things to look
yeah,
at.
that, there's a report on that one at least, where I think they,
They analyzed the time of use, the amount of time it's used, the types of uses as far as like the church, if it's meetings or a church service versus the amount of sales that they were doing. I know like really high level, not into the details on it.
there's a memo.
When the coffee shop was operating, selling coffee, but it gets used a lot for meetings, which that's a lot of coffee shops do that.
Well, I know at one time there, a lot of the fundraisers and activities that they were having there were associated or tied into the church aspect of it.
Yeah. Yeah,
So even though they were open for X number of hours a day, there was probably a very high component of church activity
and
on a
it's,
daily basis.
yeah, the church activities, it depends, is it a meeting or is it a service? Or there's just a number of factors that
Nuances.
go into that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just remembered something, you know, I was hoping this site, the unique store wouldn't be TIF. I heard that Bloomington and I don't know what the other cities, but they're starting to push back on TIF. You guys heard anything about that? Were
I
they just
have.
saying no?
I have heard them, they're going to shorter length of TIF. And they're not as readily able, I'm hearing the same thing, that they're not as readily anxious to jump into it.
So the first word I heard was Bloomington.
Yeah.
That,
Isn't it Bloomington?
the context, I think, you know, needs to be considered obviously.
yeah.
And the other tax ramifications that Bloomington is struggling with that are much different than what we're dealing with. I think it's always going to be a evolving story or questions that we have to ask on a per project basis rather than saying Columbia Heights provides 15 years and that nothing more. I would never advocate for that. I think we have to look at what are we getting and what are the
To actually see the money come
right?
pouring in.
What are the costs, you know?
Definitely that's a consideration, but I just wonder if we're too quick to agree to those higher time lengths.
We didn't with the flats, but that was.
I don't know.
We're making good use of the TIF money, right? In my opinion, though, that we have put
Yeah.
out there with the city hall, with potentially doing the sewer thing.
right?
I agree. Mata, did you have something?
Yeah, this is kind of off topic, but I guess not really. I was wondering when we hear from developers, if we can start looking at a new style of apartment buildings. I feel like this box Lego design is just, it's kind of all we're seeing. And I just think like, what's the next thing we're gonna see? So anyway, I just thought I would kind of have a little request that when we start talking to developers that we can.
Be a little
There's
more
more creative
creative. Yeah, I
ideas.
agree with you.
That
Yeah.
was one of my issues with 42nd Avenue.
Mhm.
It was another box.
Yeah,
and
it's
slapped into it.
So,
Residential.
yeah, it's a subjective lens in many ways, but how you address it is through design guidelines, right? So we do have design guidelines. They don't apply to every district, but they're due for a revamp. And I think that is how you apply pressure to that. And the market is, creating one product and it's being well received, by the users of these
Well, I think
buildings.
that
But
those are the choices. So you go to
Right.
St. Louis Park, all of the things are built that way. If you want to live in St. Louis Park in a new apartment building, that's what you're getting.
Right.
There's no like, well, this side of the road, they did a Greco-Roman style and people don't like it. It's the only choice that people have is this style. And I just
Yeah.
think, maybe even asking developers, do you have different ideas? We don't have a design guide for our city, but our council is interested in having something more creative, even if it was a different traditional style or something. But yeah, they're just so plentiful. Just would be good to know if there's an option out there. I think.
Might we have to expand the district as far as the design guidelines so that we have a little bit more say as to what the design is? Because we do have design guidelines.
Right. And maybe it's not a district
Yeah, it might
approach
be a
so much
zone
as a multifamily building should look like this, or
Mhm.
we need to look at that. Our design guidelines are due for a revamp.
Yeah, I
For
agree.
sure, it's on
I
our
agree.
list, and
Is this something we can ask of the 40 Hy-Vee for them to look at that, or is it too late?
They are in the design district.
Okay.
However, if you read through our design guidelines, I don't think you'd agree with them, right? So it's that, it does call for a very neutral
Yeah.
style,
Mhm.
right?
No.
Brick is preferred, those kinds of things. So,
With those ones being the higher end, though, they probably have more design flexibility, I would think.
yeah, and
I mean, a lot of the buildings are probably that way because when they're capped at rent, they can only design so.
yes,
much.
yes, thank you.
Exactly.
He had a lot of pictures when we were going through, I'm sure you guys saw them, of all the different exterior type designs, and there's some pretty cool ones in there that weren't the vanilla
They aren't
Right.
just box,
box. Yeah,
You-
no, right, yeah.
To answer that question, that is gonna be one of our biggest opportunities to kind of like, what do you want? And put it all in to a basket and see what we can do and really push the envelope. Do you guys like the 40th and Central aesthetic? I mean, is that,
Good, it's better than some of
It's a
the others.
start.
It's a start.
it's one of the most visually appealing footprints that you will find. Like,
Yeah.
if you look at that actual from a top view, the ins, the outs, the angles, the push,
Right,
the
they
pull,
got a lot of texture.
it is not a Lego. And
Right.
But
that's
it's a higher end one.
right.
They have
Right.
more
That's what a lattice does, and that's our expectation.
It has like a, I mean, this is a subjective word, but it has sort of a classier look than this industrial. I mean, I'm just going off. this
Yeah,
one.
that does not get my heart
You know, where they
pumping.
kinda have
This,
the west side is blue, and then the east side is orange to give it some texture, and they do some balconies, some ins and some outs to kind of give it texture, so it's not just one straight line, but it's still very boxy, whereas I think the one on 40th Central is classier.
Well, that was the one component I liked about the rainbow site, and that's that the, and I'm gonna, my terminology, the residential pieces were going to be different height towers. That was the one thing that I really liked about it, and it took that box away. That's not to say that I don't think there's more can be done facade wise to make it feel, and it's especially my concern when we're up against residential areas. I think it's important not to say that, well, we're using high quality products to do this, but or that there's brick on the homes. So, and we've got brick on our building. That's not a qualifier.
It's
I
tough,
get it,
right?
but-
It is a balancing act and a very subjective.
Subjective.
You know, most people know something is nice when you see it. Like, you know,
Right.
you can get consensus, I think, on, again, I'll come back to 40th and Central. I think if we polled, you know, 100 people, majority of them are gonna say, yeah, it's a good looking building, and that's what we want to shoot for. Kind of every other question in between, let's figure that out. Let's talk about colors. Do we like bold? Do we like bright? Do we, you know, the things that resonate with you? And I think that's going to be a fun journey on 4300 Central.
Great, I think that's awesome. I think the Grand Central flats worked really well with the buildings that were there, so I think that,
Playground.
It's a good
well,
looking
but
building.
the color of the building matches the condos and.
Right.
We
It's a
pushed
nice
the
neighborhood.
envelope on 40th and Central.
Yeah.
We were the first. I say let's continue to be the first and keep pushing the envelope for better design.
The palette on 40th and Central is very vanilla, and that was a nod to civic, you know, city hall, library, continuity. I think we can have a splash of color at 4300 Central for
The
sure.
design committee, you guys, that's gonna be residents again, right?
For
Or
4300.
New design guidelines. it'll be
Oh.
like-
Oh, for
Weren't
that
you
one.
We hadn't even
Design
really,
So
guideline.
doing those usually does involve members of the community
'cause
and then members of.
Can
council.
can I let people from the arts group?
Yeah, I'm not sure when we'll do it.
Right.
We
but
need to-
just,
I
uh,
think
Yeah.
we need to
Process
do the
usually, it's
nuts and
almost like
bolts
a-
before we get art involved.
Well, no, people residents that are artists can be on this committee.
Yeah.
So
Or
that they can have,
Well,
huh?
Architects and
Or
engineers.
architects.
Architects, we have an architect.
usually we'll bring in a consultant group to lead an
And they'll lead it,
effort
yeah.
like
But it
this.
is usually made up of residents
Yeah.
on the commission.
There
So
are
I think,
usually
Marlene, weren't
residents.
you on the previous one?
Mhm.
Yeah, I believe it was 90s.
Do you set up all these?
It's really outdated
Okay.
by our standards, 97.
Oh, wow,
I believe,
97.
I believe it was 97.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I just
Are we
wanted to
done?
kind of bring it up.
Do you have other things you want to talk to us about?
I think just an update on 4300 Central, we already touched on it. We are anticipated that Aladdis will purchase a property from Hy-Vee this week. The closing hasn't been scheduled. We could be tomorrow even, so.
What? They changed the date?
No, nothing's changed. We're-
I heard next week.
You will be the first to know. I'm
What?
gonna,
I
I'm
thought the
gonna.
closing was last week.
No, that was the bond sale closing, so the money is ready to go, sitting in escrow. The real estate closing is lagging a little bit, but all of the stuff is worked out, I'm told. There's no issues. It just is a little bit delayed, so.
And the site at 47th Central is not a part of it. And is there any ideas for that? The Hy-Vee owned.
Oh,
site?
the gas station.
Oh, the
site.
gas station thing?
Is that another, I realize it's a whole different topic. but I'm
Yeah.
just
Still own
curious, has
that?
come up yet or?
Arby's hasn't bought that from. Hy-Vee
Caribou
yet?
Coffee?
So
not?
Hy-Vee told Aladdis early on that they're not gonna get serious about selling that until they close on the sale of the main site.
Yeah.
There's
okay.
been a lot of interest that we have taken for like a coffee use. It's on the wrong side of the road. It's not on the AM side,
Mhm.
but it is at a controlled
How would it
intersection.
take out dinner?
It is a controlled intersection.
Yeah.
Caribou, Cabin.
So, and then there's two parcels there, just so everyone's aware. There's the Hy-Vee site, and then north of that is another parcel that's about the exact same size. If you combine them, it's a pretty sizable
Yeah, it is.
chunk.
Yeah,
And I think
how many acres?
we could look that up, but I want to say it's two for sure. I think they're about an acre each. So you could do a vertical mixed use project there.
Yeah, I could
potentially.
do a Grab a Green, a Panera, could do some. Got some really cool,
Nick's got
organic
apartment fatigue.
healthy restaurants.
We don't have any healthy restaurants.
We're gonna have to read public safety.
And I hear you. I
Got horrible
I
restaurants.
hear you,
except for
and
Sarna's. I
They
love
don't stay
Sarna's.
open past 8.
What?
Except for the fast
Who
food.
doesn't?
The only ones that stay open past 8 are the fast food.
no, it's fine. This was kind of EDA work session,
Yes.
so I
Okay, I
appreciate
see you've got, no public hearings,
No
no other business.
other business.
And okay, so if there isn't any other business,
Okay.
Is there any other business?
No.
All right.
All the stuff we've already been discussing.
Kidding.
So I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.